Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 of the Six Man Scoop podcast. My name is Emmett Ball and I am here with my co-host Jack Kelly. As some of you know, the NFL draft is taking place tonight at 8 o'clock p.m. in Cleveland, Ohio. And in today's episode, Jack and I just wanted to do a dive into some of our predictions and thoughts on this upcoming draft.
For on our website, we've posted our mock draft for prior to the Teddy Bridgewater getting traded to the Denver Broncos, and we'll definitely have one up by tonight with our updated thing with Teddy Bridgewater going to the Broncos, which I don't think will really change that much. So the first thing I just want to go over some of like the obvious picks, and then we can potentially even dive through the whole mock draft and especially like we'll talk more about the players that we definitely think will make immediate impacts on their teams. With the first pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars, it's pretty obvious who they're going to go with. The quarterback out of Clemson, Trevor Lawrence. He throws a great ball. Absolutely destined to be the number one pick. Has the leader mentality to do it, and Jacksonville's already welcomed him then to their family already with him getting married and sending many donations to his wedding that Trevor felt it was necessary to send donations to Jacksonville charities.
Yeah, this one should be a no-brainer. I mean, Trevor Lawrence has just been one of the most dominant quarterbacks the last few years at Clemson, and there shouldn't be any question on this one. I think that Jacksonville, if they do somehow do take somebody else, that the front office should maybe be fired because this is their big chance to kind of have a new era down in Jacksonville, and he certainly can be the one to lead them to a good playoff spot.
I think the best phrase that I've heard to describe Trevor in comparisons to every other player in this draft, he is not a prospect, he is a prodigy. This quarterback is
I
not
like
one
that.
that we're going to sit here and say, oh, like there's that high bust potential with other, because quarterbacks do have that high bust potential because you're not guaranteed to translate the game over well. But he's the best quarterback that I've seen coming into the draft since Andrew Luck. And then I would argue it before even to Peyton Manning, he would be comparable to just with mindset and planning. Number two on our mock draft, we have the New York Jets selecting Zach Wilson out of the quarterback out of BYU. Definitely was not the guy that you would have selected in your prior mock draft prior to this season, but really turned it up this year, showing different arm angles and like being able to throw on the run, which has become such a standard trait needed to be a high draft pick as a quarterback and translate to the NFL. I think Zach's big issues are one, he's a little undersized, and two, the competition. Playing at BYU, you weren't playing big competition. And I believe looking at his like records that the best teams he's played are like CCU this year when Coastal made their big run. Um, so there is some concern with competition, but at the end of the day, he always played up. In big moments, he made those big plays, and arm angles and arm talent was undeniable.
Mhm.
I think with the coaching in New York changing to Robert Saleh from Adam Gase, they needed to find their new quarterback outside of Darnold that could make those plays and really work with the offensive coordinator because Saleh will have his hands all over the defense. And this was one of those things he has to become the new face of the franchise for this new staff that is taking over in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that his performance at BYU showed fantastic decision making on the field and just world class accuracy. The Jets obviously they traded away Sam Darnold to Carolina, so obviously they do need to fill that quarterback spot. But I was listening to an ESPN interview, and the Jets front office apparently also talked about how they considered also even taking a quarterback even if they still had Darnold. So and that quarterback would have been Zach Wilson, and I think that just kind of shows just how high they valued him, and even if they wanted to play him, I don't know, split the game with Sam Darnold or start off and play him under Sam Darnold. That just kind of shows like how much they value his play style and all of that. So I thought that was interesting as well.
with the third pick in our mock draft after the Niners traded up with the Dolphins, we have them selecting Mac Jones. Mac was the original quarterback that they went after when making this trade because you would not sacrifice so many picks in the future to not have your ideal candidate to take over this position. But the San Francisco 49ers have been very diligent in the quarterback process and understanding that, yes, they came up there with the idea of Mac Jones, but it was not just Mac Jones and done. They did their work on Justin Fields and Trey Lance with the second pro days being hosted for the 49ers. But at the end of the day, I don't think there was enough done by either of those two to take it away from Mac Jones. Kyle Shanahan and the Shanahan family is known for taking quarterbacks that have that lower ceiling and pushing them above to a higher ceiling that people didn't expect it. He did it with Matt Ryan when he was in Atlanta. The team is built to win now, and I think that also has to do with Mac Jones. When you look at Justin Fields and Trey Lance, yes, they're dynamic, and yes, they'll be great talents, but they're gonna need molding, and there's going to be like a downfall to them coming into the league, especially with Trey Lance, who I believe is certain to need a year, similar to what Patrick Mahomes did with the Chiefs. And I think that's if he is able to get into a situation like that, will thrive. Mac, however, is a cerebral assassin when it comes to the game. He is able to pick apart a team under Nick Saban. You're getting that NFL style coaching. There's no doubt that like he's going to come in and just be like a freeloader. Like he's a worker. He's mentally the best in this draft and mentally the most understanding of what he's going to see on the NFL defensive side of the ball as well as the offense. The issues with Mac are ones that we are very aware of. He doesn't have this amazing arm like other quarterbacks in this draft, but he is an accurate quarterback by no means is that any question. And his like ball, he throws a beautiful ball. I would argue him and Trevor are the top two and the best ball that's thrown just in the look of when it comes off the quarterback's arms. And then also his athleticism. It's minimal, and he's not one that's going to really be able to make many plays outside of the pocket. And like once that coverage breaks down and like he has to make a play by himself or get out to find another receiver, and on that third, fourth read, he's not elite at that. But I don't want to say that he's incapable, because at the end of the day, at Alabama, he did make some of those plays, although few because of how elite Alabama's receiving cores were. It's something that I still think he's capable of doing, and that's why the 49ers will select him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up, Kyle Shanahan's coaching style, and them taking Mac Jones. He's definitely, could look like a solid veteran in his second year in the NFL. He's an NFL ready quarterback who, like you said, Shanahan can, bring him to a ceiling really quick. And, their 49ers are arguably, I mean, they made the Super Bowl not too long ago. So, they have that chance of making some noise over in the NFC. But, I think that nowadays athleticism for a quarterback has been, very successful and more sought after in the NFL. And Mac Jones obviously isn't the most athletic quarterback in this class, but he's an exception here because he's NFL ready. He has done the competition, and he won't need too much build up after his rookie year. I wouldn't be surprised if they did take a chance on Justin Fields just because of his potential and athleticism. But I think this is the right pick for them going forward.
With the fourth pick, the Atlanta Falcons. In this mock draft, we did not incorporate any trades because I definitely think that Atlanta is going to be receiving a ton of calls when it comes to tonight about this pick, just because like it gives the team to have that solid opportunity to not worry about, because we're pretty confident in we're very confident in 1 and 2, and 3 we're pretty confident in. It's between Mac and Trey. So to have your quarterback, that if you envision Justin Fields being that face of your franchise, to have him at 4 and not have to worry about another team interfering with that, I definitely think Atlanta is going to be moving out of this pick. However, if they don't, I think they take in my opinion, the number one prospect in this class with zero bust potential, in my opinion, barring injuries. And that's the tight end out of Florida, Kyle Pitts. At 6'6", 240, he is a big boy. I mean, there is no doubt that he is a target to be reckoned with, and especially running 4.44 speed on a 40 is crazy. In my article I wrote about the ideal location for him, in my opinion, would be San Francisco. However, I just don't think it could ever happen with how much they gave up to move up to 3. The Kyle Pitts is your new age tight end on steroids. There's no doubt that when you look at Atlanta, they are a team that is ready to win if everything clicks. And the main thing last year was it didn't click. Having Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Matt Ryan, and Kyle Pitts will be a receiving core that is one that you can be very confident in. And also to say that you have Hayden Hurst with Kyle Pitts. It is not Kyle Pitts is your sole tight end, because there is questions about Kyle Pitts' blocking, but that can be helped and especially taught with and by Hayden Hurst, because at the end of the day, blocking is not something that requires this immense amount of like skill and just natural talent. At the end of the day, it is hard work, teaches you how to be a good blocker, and repetition with the mechanics. And if you choose to do that, you can become an amazing tight end. And when it comes to blocking, because we looked at George Kittle 2-3 years ago, we would have never said George Kittle was one of the best blocking tight ends. But now we have places like House of Highlights posting highlights strictly of George Kittle blocking and pancaking linemen. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, he put in that effort and he learned and did the repetition that was necessary. I think definitely there's a possibility for a receiver to be taken with this pick, just because you do have the Julio Jones trade rumors, and especially with the cap situation, that's definitely a possibility, and quarterback. But the main issue with taking, I think, something outside of Kyle, especially a quarterback, when you look at this team, if they do not start off hot again, but you have your hometown kid in Justin Fields on this team, and he lit it up in preseason this year, and he's sitting on the bench, you're going to have a major push by new coaching staff and fans to put Justin Fields in. Let's see what we got. But there is such a strong cap hit to Matt Ryan. It is unfair to the situation to not play Matt Ryan. And especially having that hometown kid, and there's going to be a big push for him to take over if things aren't going well. So I'd rather see Matt Ryan stay in. We'll work around Matt Ryan with Kyle Pitts, with our new offense, and hopefully draft a running back later on to fulfill out that like offensive 3 in the wide receiver, tight end, and halfback group. So definitely don't think there's any question about who's the number one prospect, and I think that's who's going to be taken by Atlanta.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Kyle Pitts definitely is my most exciting guy to watch next year for sure. And that's, partly due to, he's only 20 years old. You're barely older than him, Jack. And like that he's a freak of nature, like we were talking about. In his first season, I think he had around maybe 80 yards receiving with a touchdown. And the next year, he jumped that 80 yards to 700 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. And then just this past season, he improved that to 800 yards and 12 touchdowns. He has really just improved every year over at Florida, and there's potentially going to be a new era in Atlanta, and like you were saying with the Julio Jones and trade rumors, and then I could realistically see Matt Ryan leaving soon or getting traded. I don't know, but you cannot let this guy fall too far in the draft. If he somehow falls to 6, 7, or 8, any teams not 1 and 2 in the draft would, I would think that they would regret their pick once they see what Kyle Pitts can do in the NFL. I mean, this kickstarts, one of I think can be the most dominant player offensively. And like you said with Hayden Hurst, Hayden Hurst has he has done those 2, 3 tight end lineups in Baltimore. Along with Mark Andrews, and so he's used to doing that, and so I think Atlanta can definitely run plays that involve both tight ends, and it worked well for Baltimore. I don't see why it can't work down in Atlanta, but I think Kyle Pitts is going to be a really exciting player to watch this upcoming season.
I definitely agree. And moving on to Cincinnati with the 5th pick, I think it's definitely a two-person conversation here, a two-position conversation. A offensive tackle or a lineman that's going to help protect Burrow, or a receiver that's going to allow Burrow to flourish. All talks have been around from Burrow and his place have all said that we want Jamar Chase. Like reunite me with my college friend that I absolutely tore it up with, going, I believe, for 20 touchdowns and over 1,000 yards. Like absolutely lit the world on fire, and he was one of the main contributors along with Justin Jefferson to pushing Burrow from an undrafted free agent to the #1 overall pick in this year's class. So I definitely see the argument for Jamar Chase here, but I definitely would have picked Jamar Chase, barring that Burrow did not tear his ACL this year. With Burrow tearing his ACL, offensive alignment has to be where you go, and I think Penei Sewell is that prize of an offensive lineman, especially falling at 5. He is a freak of nature, one that will move people like nobody could imagine. I think he is your staple left tackle. However, it is not needed with the Bengals having Jonah Williams. And I think he could play left tackle if needed. I think he's a right tackle, and I think he's big enough and agile enough to even move into guard. And he's one of the top 2 with Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern, who I definitely considered with this pick. But I think Sewell's just the higher prospect here, especially when you look at like offensive linemen in the past, your top offensive linemen, such as like Quentin Nelson, Joe Thomas, even, they're all coming into this as like upperclassmen, like seniors, like redshirt seniors, like older guys that have worked on this skill set. Penei Sewell sat out last year and is coming in as a junior. This kid is 20 years old and is a freak of nature on the run side. And obviously his biggest concern is pass blocking. But when you're at Oregon, you're not taking those 5-step, 7-step drop backs where you got to drop back. And it's a lot like with Kyle Pitts and blocking. He will become a better pass protector the later on he moves, strictly by repetition. So I think he'll be able to dominate immediately with his physical skill set. But once he gets to year 3, year 4, year 5, once they extend him, because I have no issues, no concern that he will not be one of those people that gets that 5th-year option as a first-round pick. He will become an elite pass blocker and someone that you will say will be an important part of the Bengals' offensive line and a staple at whatever position they choose to put him at for at least 10 years, if not going to 12, 15.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Especially the part, they expect the Bengals expect Joe Burrow to come back and play at the start of this upcoming season. ACL tear is a very big injury, and the last thing that myself and probably you and then lots of football fans, the last thing we want to see is just him be the next RG3, go down with injuries, never come back the same. His rookie season tearing your ACL, that's a huge blow, and so I think prior to that, if he didn't do that, it's kind of a toss up. You have your franchise quarterback. The question is who do you want to put around him to help him? And so Jamar Chase would be a super exciting option. Uh, but you've got some solid young wide receivers um, over there right now, and so I think you're right where you go offensive line with Penny Sewell, and you kind of go the safe route and the right route there.
So that moves us to the sixth pick with the Miami Dolphins. I think this is where Jamar Chase goes. I think a lot of the 4, 5, 6 is if the pick is not traded by Atlanta, the 4, 5, 6 conversation is Penei Sewell, Kyle Pitts, and Jamar Chase. I have no doubt that those are my 3 top non-quarterback prospects, and I would even argue that they are higher than some of the quarterback prospects that we've said. So I definitely think this is where Jamar Chase goes. Give to another weapon and let him see how it goes, because at the end of the day, the Miami Dolphins having this opportunity to have a high pick while being very good this past year was strictly based off of the Laramie Tunsil trade, and there's reasons why they did the trade to move back with the 49ers and then move up. So I definitely think Jamar Chase is the pick here to help see if Tua is that guy.
Yeah, I agree, and they were probably the biggest dealer in the draft coming into it. Um, they sent the 49ers pick 3 for number 12, and then a future first and third, um, and then actually 2 future firsts, and then they had some draft capital there, so they sent that number 12 pick, and I think a 2022 first round pick in exchange for the 6th pick and I think another pick. And so, that's 3 to 6. There's still some real solid guys on the board there, and I think that they made the right move there. They still get someone like Jamar Chase. I agree with you. I think they will go him there. He has lots of potential, and he had a disappointing rookie year. I think with playing after Ryan Fitzpatrick, but it's all about improvement with rookies, and I think having him at wide receiver will help him out going forward.
Definitely agree. I think to the 7th pick now is when one of the Alabama receiver goes, because with the Lions, you have to give Jared Goff a chance. I get the trade to Stafford was definitely moving towards the future and realizing that y'all are not, as the Detroit Lions, are not in a position to win today. But it doesn't mean you don't give Goff a chance to succeed, because at the end of the day, he was a number 1 overall pick for a reason. He did lead the Rams to a playoff game and the Super Bowl. Like, there's reasons why Goff has done what he has done. So I think Jalen Waddle's your pick here. I think there's an argument between Smith and Waddle, and I think at the end of the day, although I think Smith is your better ceiling prospect, I'm worried about the floor with the size. And although he has come out and said, like, yes, we're NFL players, not bodybuilders, the jam at the line from your physical corners that you're going to see in this division, like Jair Alexander at the Packers, like,
Yeah.
this is not a division where, especially it being a colder, like, rough division, like, this is not one I would say is very offensive friendly when it comes to throwing the ball. I definitely think you need a more for sure receiver, and that's what you're going to get in Jalen Waddle, especially the ability for Jalen Waddle to do things outside of just the pass catching. he can work on your return team as well and do some things that they do over in San Francisco with jet sweep, stuff like that. So yeah, I don't love the pick. I think they're definitely going to be one of those teams that might be moving back if outside top 10 team wants to try to swoop in to grab a quarterback for these later in the top 10 teams. So I don't see them making this pick with trades, but without trades, this is who I believe they will select.
Yeah, and I would say that outside of wide receiver, I guess if they were still to make this pick, they might go. Uh, they need some help in the linebackers, so they could go Micah Parsons from Penn State to help on their defensive front. But I agree with you. I think that you make a huge trade for Jared Goff. Get giving him a chance and getting him some help, and so you can have someone like Jalen Waddle kind of be a wild card guy, and you've got your wide receiver one in Kenny Galladay, but you've got it's sort of like in Atlanta when you've got Julio Jones as your clear cut number one receiver, and then you've got your just now had a fantastic season, Calvin Ridley, out of Alabama, and so I think this could be a similar situation there. You've got kind of all the top corners focused on Galladay, and then obviously the corners super athletic. They're tough, much harder than college corners, but you've got Jalen Waddle that could definitely be a difference maker in Detroit if they do make that pick there.
For the 8th pick, we have the Carolina Panthers selecting Trey Lance. I think this is the highest ceiling quarterback in this draft, falling to a team that has offensive weapons that, if he gets the chance to take over for this team, will be a offense that will be dominant. I definitely still think with the trade for Darnold that the quarterback conversation is not one that is over for the Panthers if they stay at this pick, because at the end of the day, the quarterback is your most important position. We've seen it in Super Bowls that decent quarterback play can happen for 3 quarters against bad quarterback play. At the end of the day, great quarterbacks win you games, and that has been a lot of what has happened. I definitely see Trey Lance going, sitting a year behind Darnold, and then they're going to look at it. Oh, we have Darnold after this 5th-year option, and do we want to keep Darnold and trade Lance for future picks, or it's one of those future moves? Because I don't think any players in this position really changed the outcome of their following season.
I think that there's Darnold is having a chance with a better a little bit of a better supporting cast. New York, I think people kind of looked down on him because he didn't have much help for people to throw to. Not a great offensive line in Carolina. He sort of has a little bit of both, and so he will certainly get his chance in Carolina to kind of prove the kind of player he is and prove that he was the number one overall pick worthy player there. So I think that there's still a little bit of uncertainty with him, and with the quarterbacks that the quarterback group that is in this draft, I think that I think Trey Lance is a great pickup because obviously if first they will probably start Darnold um, for the time being, but he can obviously learn under him, and Carolina could easily decide, yeah, Darnold's not really the answer. You might want to just start new, and he could be someone that could be the QB in the future for Carolina.
And that's exactly what I was going on, and the realization that you will have two good young quarterbacks, and let's say both do well going into next year, and you want to commit to Lance or Darnold. The stuff that was given up to acquire Darnold was future assets.
Mm-hmm.
Those future assets could be made up double, especially with the quarterback class not being great next year, to a team that is quarterback needy. So I definitely think that this is, like I said, a future pick that can definitely like promote a franchise to find out who's going to be their future, because their owner is not one that is going to shy away from making these big, bold moves and wanting to spend the money to see what's going to make Carolina great, not good.
Yeah, and I also think that they could, off their offensive line has always been a bit of a concern the past couple years. So I could also see them uh, going Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern, or even trading down. I think they just have plenty of options. But around the 10th pick here, so I'll be
Yes.
interested to see what happens there.
With the ninth pick, we have the Denver Broncos selecting Justin Fields. I think this year is the year we finally get the Denver Broncos to select outside of the mold of their prior quarterbacks, Peyton Manning. Before, it's been your standard quarterback who's tall, big, has played in like an older style offense that is not your athletic, you're not your big arm. What John Elway sees as your ideal quarterback. And it's funny to say that like teams do that, but it's definitely shown with going after Brock Osweiler in trade, drafting Paxton Lynch. Drew Lock's another example. So I see him taking Justin Fields here. I think the Teddy Bridgewater trade is one that was made because the offer was great. I mean, you gave up a 6th-round pick for a quarterback that was paid $30 million 2 years ago, and now he's getting paid $10 million, and out of that $10 million, you're only having to pay 3. Like, Carolina was looking to get out of him, and what you acquired was a mentor for your future quarterback, whether that is Drew Lock or Justin Fields. I think this almost puts them in a similar position to Carolina with, I think it's going to go in a quarterback battle. I don't think Bridgewater wins in any way. It's going to be one of the two younger guys. I think Fields emerges with it, and then they can trade off Drew Lock for late round picks for a team like that needs a quarterback in the next year. My main concern with this pick is that Justin Fields is not your NFL style quarterback. I think a lot of the issues with Fields has been his inability to go past that first read. And I think that's definitely something he's going to see being in that West Coast division with some elite secondary players like Derwin James. And that, I mean, that whole Kansas City's defense is fast on the back end with Tyrann Mathieu and all other players on the LA Chargers, who I did not mention. I don't want to discount from their defenses by any means. No. But if Justin Fields can grow based off of that, I definitely think that he will thrive in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. I think that, the Broncos should have, one of the two quarterbacks available to them between Trey Lance and Justin Fields here, and I think that's a blessing for them. Just the fact that there's, arguably probably 5 top tier quarterbacks that will probably go in the top 10. So I think that's fantastic quarterback capital. I think they went with the trade for Bridgewater to have, a solid backup, in case your primary goes down. There's a chance they don't go quarterback here. And I don't know, maybe they tried Drew Lock one more year and then just have Bridgewater as their backup. I really don't want to see that. Like you said, I think they should move on. And even if quarterback was to go down, you saw how Teddy Bridgewater did in New Orleans. after Drew Brees went down, he played fantastic, and that's part of why the Panthers gave him that deal. So I do think that Fields should go here to Denver, though.
Yes, and with the last pick that because this mock draft, I mean, it's 32 teams, and we could talk about them for I think another hour and a half. We're just going to touch on the top 10 to round out that. Dallas Cowboys, a team that is defensively very weak, and although there's been rumors of them trading up to go get Kyle Pitts, which I would say would make them by far the best offense in the NFL.
Yeah,
I think they have to adjust the defense here, especially after letting Byron Jones go to Miami for that ginormous contract. I think Patrick Surtain out of Alabama is your guy, especially pairing him with Trayvon Diggs, who was drafted a year before. Alabama is no doubt one of those places that if they put out a cornerback, you know that they're going to be taught well under Saban, and that excellence is not the minimum, but it is not like the peak, but it is the minimum.
mm-hmm.
And something that he's a tough physical corner that has gone and sought to go after those best receivers. So in years, he's guarded Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase out of LSU, and then also going after Kadarius Toney in Florida, and receivers out of like Shi Smith and Debo Samuel and at USC. Like those big name receivers that are one making great plays in college that have transferred over to the NFL. He has gone and guarded and locked them down. I definitely think if they don't go Surtain here, it is Jace Horn. It's one of those 50-50s. But I think Surtain is your more steadfast, like, he's going to be a great cornerback in this NFL and the NFL his rookie year, where I definitely think Jace Horn is more of he's been a riser for a reason. Like, he is a dynamic cornerback. I would almost go to say more physical than Sherman, which is hard to believe considering how physical of a cornerback Sherman is. But I think Dallas cannot afford to have a cornerback they miss on, especially not this year with Dak having this opportunity to have a good pick with Dak being out. I mean, definitely would have loved to have Dak stay healthy, but
yeah,
take advantage of having this low pick and then go compete for a division that's very weak, but has some new receivers, that has some good young receivers in Rager, Galladay. I think the Redskins will take another one and Kadarius Toney later on in the draft, but I definitely think Terry McLaurin needs someone like to have Surtain and Diggs on both sides is something that will ensure that your secondary is not amazing, but is solidified.
Yeah, I think here, it's, there's, I think the clearest gaping hole in the Cowboys team is that defensive side of the football, and so I think that, you know, I think that Surtain will be the first defensive player drafted, and probably the best one, and so I think that the Cowboys have. No excuse not to take him because I think that pairing him um, over there uh, in Dallas, I think that they'll have two young cornerbacks to go forward, and so I think you go. There's no question you go defense here, um, unless you do have a realistic chance for someone like Kyle Pitts. I just don't see that happening though. Um, so I guess who is someone that you think um, will drop farther than they're projected, or sorry, players who you think will be taken higher than they're projected to go?
Projected to go. I think projections are always very like a weird thing to say, just because they like to project them to one team, and if someone takes it over, it's like a steal. So
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think we're going to see a lot with the quarterbacks. I wouldn't be shocked if the quarterback's taken at 4 with the Atlanta trade. I think definitely teams that are going to be trading up to take quarterbacks. I think there's no doubt in my mind that the Power Five quarterbacks, like the Power Five that have been not like the conferences, but like the best five
Mhm.
that we've all been talking about, will all go inside the top 10.
Yeah.
If you are a top 10 team not in need of a quarterback, puts you in an amazing position because those top level prospects are going to be available to you at 6, 7,
Yeah.
8, instead of you
Absolutely.
getting potentially not as good as a prospect and someone like Micah Parsons compared to, which I think will be a force to reckon with at linebacker. He is still not your Panay Sewell that you'll get. I think that's really, I think, is you're going to see a lot of quarterbacks will be the people that have been reached for, like in most years' drafts. Like you have teams like Chicago Bears who traded up just a pick to make sure that they got Mitch. The Chiefs traded up to get Mahomes. I mean, the Houston Texans traded up to go get Deshaun. Like all three quarterbacks in that draft, they traded up to go get just because they wanted to make sure they got their guy. I think. I mean, do you have any big players that you think are going to be like overshot over for some reason?
I don't know. I guess my only two players that I'm interested to see, and um, this one kind of is more of a hometown thing, but one is Caleb Farley, who's a cornerback for Virginia Tech.
Mm.
And so I had a buddy in high school. He's a corner. He's a wide receiver at Virginia Tech. And so he played with this guy, and he at a football game he took him, and I met him, and I was like, oh, this guy's cool. I watched him in college, and he looks super solid. Um, but right now he hasn't played. In a while because he has had back surgery, and so his um I guess stock has dropped a lot, and so I'm wondering what teams could potentially take a chance on someone like him because his potential is definitely through the roof. And if he can stay healthy, I think he can be someone close to Certain esque. So I think that he could go from somewhere falling out of the first round to even going within the top 20. So, that's kind of up in the air. Another one is Najee Harris out of Alabama. Um, I'm interested to see, uh, with them not having Le'Veon Bell, and kind of they've got James Conner, who's been really solid the last couple years, but it's kind of taken a dip a little bit year by year. Um, we I think that the Steelers could take him in their first round pick. Where do you think you see him falling, or what team do you think would take a chance on someone like him?
The running backs this year are ones that I'm kind of worried. It's weirding me out a bit because I'm reading my personal, like looking at scouting. I have Najee 1, ETN 2, and those are the only ones I consider for first round draft. But there's people who are saying that they have Javonte Williams, the running back out of North Carolina, as their number one running back over Najee Harris. So to see where like those teams that have Javonte as their number one, are they willing to take that chance and putting him as their first running back? Or are they saying, oh, he's our first running back, but definitely not a first round grade? And I don't see any as a first round running back. My personal opinion, and in our mock draft, we both have two running backs going. We have Najee going to the Steelers. I think it's a perfect fit. A tough, put your nose to the work, put your nose to work and literally just grind. Like he's one of those running backs that you have no doubt if you meet him, he's going like in the hole, he's going to plow through you. He's a
Yeah.
north to south running back, but still makes amazing plays on the outside, whether it be catching the ball, pitches, counters. Like he's not just your halfback dive kind of running back that
Yeah.
you're going to hand him to him 20 times and that's all he's going to do is run down your throat. Like he can do both. And then ETN, I have going later to the Buffalo Bills, strictly because ETN is, yes, he's not your ideal north-south running back, but he can do it. He showed it, especially this year at Clemson. But outside, getting him outside in space through bubble screens and stuff like that, and pitches, counters, like I said, with the opposite to Najee, he can make plays in space. And
Yeah.
I think he is a dynamic portion to someone's offense. I would borderline say that Najee reminds me a little bit of Derrick Henry, being that bigger size running back, but definitely has more of that outside ability than Derrick Henry. But I would say Etienne or Kamara, someone that you can play as that receiver. And like even in fantasy things, like when Kamara is doing great, like yes, he's your number one running back in fantasy football, but they even compare him to receivers because of how many catches he'll get.
Yeah.
Because in an offense like the Saints, they're moving him outside and letting him run little slants and go routes and stuff just to like create dynamic plays and the ideal matchup of who would you put on someone like that? Because at the end of the day, you bring another corner onto the field, you're very weak in the box because you can still put another running back down there. And with Buffalo, with someone like Zach Moss or Devin Singletary. So I definitely think Etienne and Najee will both be first-round picks to those teams. But I think the running backs at the end of the day are just a confusing game to play with because it's not a year that we have a Zeke or a Saquon Barkley or a Derrick Henry where we're like, oh, these are your top end, like upper first round draft picks of these guys will be like all pro running backs in their rookie contracts.
Yeah. I guess the last thing I'll say about it is, I think we had ETN going 30 to Buffalo, and Josh Allen. I really like watching him, and his play style sort of reminds me a little bit of Trevor Lawrence because he'll run the option all the time and just kind of run down the middle like Trevor Lawrence does. Definitely has a better arm, and Trevor Lawrence has some developing to do. But having ETN with someone with a little bit of the same skill sets as his college quarterback that he played with. I think that'll be interesting to watch if that does happen. But anything else you wanted to touch on?
I would say I want to touch on one player, a couple players actually. I don't think this player will get drafted in the first round. Out of Stanford, offensive tackle Walker Little. I think he is a unique prospect, especially with situations with COVID, because he played. The coach out of Stanford is known for not playing freshmen early. Like that's just not the Stanford way. They like to stick with their veterans. He started offensive tackle his freshman year, and he dominated. And then he got hurt and then opted out. So we saw him. He was the number one offensive tackle prospect, I believe. I know he was a 5-star coming out of, I believe, Texas to Stanford. And then to have a great freshman season, get hurt, and then now he's available in the draft. He's one of those players that if one of those later teams want to take a risk on an offensive tackle in that late first round just to have that fifth-year option, I wouldn't be upset about it. But he's going to be a day two, like round two, round three prospect that if you put the work in with him and develop him and it turns out right, there was arguments after his freshman year going into when he would declare as a junior that he would be a top 5 overall pick with how dominant he looked and how much development and like promise looked into his like play style. And then to get hurt definitely hurt that. And that's why I have him dropping, but outside of that top 5 pick. But definitely I'm a big person that when you have those later picks, those are not always guys that are going to guarantee to come in and make big plays. I think every year, like you have those later round picks that you're like, wow, like this guy really turned it up and like should have been a first round pick with how he played. Like Darius Leonard was a second round pick, but when you go back and redo your mock drafts of like, oh, who would I pick now? You see that Quentin Nelson and Darius Leonard are both top 10 picks. So definitely you're going to have guys like that, but like to have those prospects that you're able to work with and grow, I think Walker Little could definitely do that. Another one I'm kind of interested in to seeing where he falls and how he plays is Micah Parsons.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think without the off the field issues and the mentality issues, we say Micah Parsons is your number one defensive player ahead of Surtain. and is inside the top 10. But just some of them like comments that have been made and like mentality and like commitment issues, that's where Mike Parsons has fallen. But there's no doubt that he is exactly what the new era linebacker is, which is someone with speed, amazing coverage skills, and can still get to the quarterback. I think he has the ability to be what Devin White is to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and really dominate like those elite tight ends, because at the end of the day, like Travis Kelce is, in my opinion, the best tight end and was locked down by the linebacking core of Tampa Bay with Levante David and Devin White. And that's what's needed nowadays, because we are running into the position crossover age of we're having big guys playing receiver, and we're having these big running backs now, and like, but they're still insanely fast. Like they're not boxable. There's no longer like, oh, you have to be slow and good at blocking and have good hands to be a tight end. No, now you can be the guy that's running that 4-4-4, running straight down the field and burning everyone to get to be an amazing tight end and be that top level tight end. So I definitely would like to see where he falls. Especially division wise, landing with the Giants. Like there are some good tight ends, Ertz, Logan Thomas in that division that I definitely think could be some interesting matchups if he lands with the Giants with the 11th pick. Outside of that, I think the draft's going to be I don't think it's going to be an exciting draft. I don't think there's going to be a lot of moves once you get past the top 10. I could see one report I've been hearing a lot, speaking back to Caleb Farley, is that the Saints are very high on him and have talked about potentially moving up to go get him, because wouldn't take a lot, just because you're not going to be in that position where like teams are going to be asking a ton. They're probably going to have to trade that. Like if they want, I think they have 28 to move up to something like in the lower 20s. I would say it's probably going to take that current pick and then a later pick on in the draft to go get your guy, because I definitely think Farley on the Saints could definitely play well with Marshawn Lattimore and be someone that takes over for Lattimore when he leaves, because I don't believe the Saints will retain him just due to the fact of salary cap issues with that team.
Yeah,
Like they have a lot of money tied up into players. And then that's really all the players I'm really excited to see. And then especially Jason Ward, just being a South Carolina fan, where he falls.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the draft is always kind of exciting to watch for football fans. This one in particular, maybe not as hyped up as past drafts that I've seen. But outside of the top 3 or something, you've got some questions on where teams will go. And so I think that's, part of why I love watching it, is just kind of thinking like, oh my gosh, I never thought they would go that direction, but I guess I understand. Or people will make a pick where everyone's like, why did you do that? So I'm definitely excited to see what happens tonight, and see, where you and I were right, where we were wrong. It's kind of part of it. But if that's all we've got for today's episode. We thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back. Uploaded we'll upload our episode 3 next Tuesday. So stay tuned for that. But thanks for coming on and watch and listening.
See you guys.
See ya.